Okay, so in this video, we're actually going to continue on with our series with the modern UI design. And in here, what we're going to do in this video, we're actually going to talk about the parking lot drop down. So you can see here, when you're requesting a parking spot, you can select which parking lot that you actually want to request that spot within. So instead of normally what we would do, either in the out-of-the-box form or a custom Power App form, you would have these drop-downs, options as a standard drop-down. But we can get a little bit more fancy with that, more of a graphical representation of all those different options. And we're going to walk through how to do that within the Canvas app. So as you can see here, I've done that already using Power Apps as a custom form. So I'm going to just show you that the same technique could be used in the Canvas app that we started in the previous video. Okay, so just to kind of recap to see where we are. So we have step 1, we have step 2, and we have step 3. And it seems like step 3 is our placeholder for those different parking lot options. So very similar to what we've done before. I'm a huge fan of leveraging the form component to highlight a lot of these different options. That's just because the saving and then the default values and using the existing save value to kind of be as a starting point, the natural flow of using these forms or apps is all baked in within the form control. So I'm a huge fan of using the form control for that. So here we're just going to continue on with that same concept. You drop into the form control, click edit field, and what we need to do is bring in our parking spot options. So here we can do, let me just make sure I'm editing the right one. So step 2, okay, so step 2 and step 3 are similar. Let me just zoom in so you guys can see there pretty clearly. So here on my step 3, select the step 3 control, hit edit form, add the field. Again, my parking spot, let me just call it parking. Let's see, what is the name of it? Okay, so parking lot drop down is just a drop down option. And this is just a choice column on the SharePoint list. So for this first option, we don't need this anymore. So let's just go ahead and remove it. And then we just go ahead and select our data card. It's going to have our parking drop down. If I hold down the Alt key here, you can see my options here. Now, if I go ahead and select the label, let's just go ahead and make this pop. So let's just go home. We got to do some styling here because we kind of have that dark background. So we need enough contrast for everything to pop. And then let's just change our label to, because I think, what did we call it? We said which parking spot in the question mark. And you notice that I would never name a site column which parking spot with a question mark in there, right? So these are just going to be display options on the data card. So if I go to advanced here with the data card selected, go over here to the display name option, just type in the word which parking lot and then add the question mark. Right? And if you see my video on best practices with setting up your SharePoint list, you will notice that for any site column, the internal name has 0 spaces, no special characters. The display name is punchy, straight to the point, and the more verbose, elaborate, user-friendly names, we're going to do that directly in the form itself. And that's really, really important, especially when you get into your Power Automate part of the process. You want some nice, clean names to work with. All right, so enough on that. So now let's just go ahead and drop this in. So if you kind of bounce back here, we're pulling this off by using the gallery. And you're going to actually, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that are not that obvious when you're dealing with galleries, and especially galleries and form controls in conjunction with each other. So the first thing we want to do is we actually don't need this piece here to drop down. So we're not going to delete it. We're just going to hide it, right? So we're going to turn the visibility off for that. And now I'm going to have my data card selected. I'm going to hit the plus sign, and I'm going to bring in the gallery. So for this one, I actually want a horizontal gallery. So let me just select the horizontal gallery here, and that's going to go ahead and bring that on my screen. And let me just rename things here. So gallery, and just call lot options, right? So I got my gallery selected, got my renamed lot options. Notice where my gallery was placed. It was placed at the root level of my screen 3. So actually it's going to be a sibling to my form control. And actually I want that part of my data card. So I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. Again, these are options that are not that apparent. Actually, let's go ahead and move it now. So to move this into the data card, you actually cut it from the screen view, select your data card, hit the ellipse, and then hit paste. And that's going to paste it right there inside of the data card. And that's important because I want, if this gallery requires more space, I want everything underneath this. And so in this sample here, it's really straightforward. But imagine if I had other fields and all this other good stuff. I want those to move and adjust their height based on the height requirement that's needed for this data card of parking lots, i.e. the child gallery component. And I can't do that if it's floating on top. You get some really nasty results with the gallery expanding out and sitting on top of your different controls and all this other good stuff. So one of the things that we don't have, that we didn't establish in the previous screens, I have these buttons at the same level. Again, these are going to be at the root level of my screen, and these are probably best served, especially with a data card that can adjust in height depending on its data requirements. These are probably best served inside of a custom data card within our form. Again, using the power of the form control, you have not only spacing capabilities, but also here you're going to be able to notice how the saving and retrieving is pretty straightforward as well. Okay, so now I'll put in the custom data card. Let me just rename this really quickly. All my data cards are prefixed with DC, and let's just call this buttons. Right, so once I have that custom data card selected, now I can come up here and select my buttons, do a cut, and go to the data card, go ahead and paste those in, and now they're in position. Now, they seem to be in the same position, but here's the benefit. The benefit is if I go to this data card, and now if I need more height, you notice how my buttons just adjust based on what my other siblings are doing within this form component. And that's a very nice experience, and sometimes a must to have when you're dealing with dynamic data in that way. Okay, so here, let's go ahead and finish building out our data card. We don't want this video to be too long here. So here I'm gonna just adjust, let me kind of zoom out because we're gonna do a lot of placement and adjusting, sizing, and all this other good stuff. Now, I have this data card coming in, and first thing I want to do, let's go ahead and set a collection. And because I have this as a child component of this data card, I'm sorry, gallery, I keep calling it data card. So with this gallery selected, because this is a gallery and its parent is the data card, I can leverage some of the same formulas or expressions that you get with the other components that live under data cards. And what do I mean by that? If I select this drop-down component, the one that we have hidden, and you will notice that its collection is going to be this fancy choice method that's going against the parking lot site column. All I want to do is copy that and make the same collection property expression for my gallery. And once I paste that in, all of a sudden, it's missing this Q. This should have highlighted with all of my choice options that are currently set for my, and I think they're there. I think they're just hidden because I have this dark text on the dark background. It's kind of hard to see if anything happens. So let me light these up for you real quick. So let me change the text color to white. And you would notice if I scroll through this data card, let me zoom in so that way we can all kind of see this in action. But just with that simple change in the expression from the drop down to my gallery, I all of a sudden got all the values that I needed right here in my gallery component. So here, let me, and I know I keep mismatching it and mistakenly calling the gallery the data card, but it's not. All right, so let's go ahead and, what they've done, so it does allow this mapping for me, right, with the title and the subtitle. I don't need one of these, so let me just go ahead and delete the subtitle. And now another thing I need to do is start getting the positioning right. So I have way more options that's available on the screen, and having this horizontal scroll is probably not the best experience that we need for these parking lot options. So let me select my gallery, go in here. One of the things that the gallery has is the wrap count. I'm gonna change that to a 2, and that's gonna go ahead and evenly distribute my collection across 2 rows, right? So now I want to give this a little bit more breathing space. So I select the image and control. Let's just make that smaller. and then I select on a space next to the image control. This is going to give me the bounding box of my template. My template is that thing that gets repeated for each and every item in the collection. So now I can kind of adjust this to where I can feel that I can get most of what I need on the screen. And now I want to take these components. Here's my image component, here's my label. Let's go ahead and center those within my template. So the first, now when you're dealing with a label control, you're going to have two alignment options. This alignment option is coming off this dropdown. It's aligning it based on its space within the template area, right? So the template width. The second alignment option is the justify text, and here I want to center that as such, right? So now what I want to do, let me just grab my gallery, get away from my heading label right there, give it a little bit more breathing space. And now I'm still not happy with the width, right? Because it's still cutting off this executive option. So let's go ahead and fix that. I think I actually may require another rep count. So let's just change this rep count to 3. And there it went ahead and adjusted down. And this becomes a little bit tedious in really understanding like whether you're selecting what's actually selected when you click on different options. And here what I want to do, I want to expand my template so I can actually get more breathing space within my template. And then let's realign these, let's recenter these. And then I still feel like I don't have a lot of breathing space. Okay, so this is going to stretch all the way across. Maybe I don't need this gallery to stretch all the way over, and let's center the gallery itself. All right, as a container. Okay, now we're getting closer to where we need. And every time I adjust my template width, it seems like I need to keep coming up here to adjust my centered capabilities. All right, so I feel like I need a little bit more height on this template just to kind of give it some breathing room. And for some reason, I feel locked. Why am I unlocked? Let's go ahead and adjust. Oh, okay, maybe my data card is locking me in to a certain height. So once I adjust the data card, go to my template. Okay, so that's going to give me a little bit more breathing space. All right. So the other thing, you can still see that executive is being cut off, and this is just me having to really just kind of hone in or dial in my width. So what I'm doing with my label here, I'm stretching this out so I kind of get the full container of my template, because I can never anticipate what the different options are going to be, right? So let's just stretch it out. And now let me stretch my gallery out. So, and this is all of us a sizing exercise at this point, right? Just finding the right balance with all of these widths, just to make sure you're getting everything that you expect and keeping everything centered along the way. All right. Okay, so that's good. That's good for now. I think that's good for now. We're stretching. I don't want that scroll bar though, so that's annoying. So you should not have a scroll. All right, so that's good for now. I can keep tinkering this until I'm blue in the face. Let me just center this to make sure everything's centered, and then we can go to the next step, which is to actually bring in the other pieces that are needed. Come on. All right. Okay, I'm done. I promise you I'm done. All right, so now what we want to do is to have each one of these icons, the image control actually show up as a parking icon, right? So what I can do, I can select this image control component, come over here into the image property, and for now, let me just select the Tesla logo. And it actually came in real nice. And actually, I don't need all of that height in that logo, so let me just readjust that, center that, push this up a little bit, give it a little bit more breathing space, and now we should be good to go. It's not 100% centered, so I can probably play around with that a little bit more. Okay, so now that we have our logo, the effect is, and if you look at this, when the user selects it, you notice how the icon gets lower, but the checkmark icon is visible, and the user kind of get an indicator that whatever they clicked on is actually selected. So let's go ahead and simulate, see what it takes to pull something like that off. Now, the first thing we want to do is go into our template, and it's not apparent. So let me level set on a couple things with the template. So the template can only be adjusted for the first item in the gallery. So I can't go to the second and third item and try to make those adjustments. You see it just doesn't respond to those clicks. Another thing is that if you click on the component within the template, you kind of want to kind of get into the area a little bit outside of that component, select it, and that kind of gives you or reveals the template spacing that you're actually dealing with. Okay, so that's one of the things to keep in mind. Now, once I have the template selected, what I want to do is hit this plus sign and bring in a icon selector. Icons are probably better selected from the top here. So let me do insert and then hit this icon drop down, and I just want to do the checkbox, right? So I want to bring that checkbox over. Checkboxes are usually green, which kind of shows you that something is selected and selected successfully. Here I can adjust this height down to where it makes sense. All right, so now I have this checkbox. And if I go to the icon, one of the things we want to do with the icon, so here, let me just note these dimensions here. We have to make the icon a little bit smaller. It's not a need, but I think it gives off a really good effect, right? So let's just drop this down. So these are our original values, right, for the height and width of the icon when it's not selected. So now what we want to do, let's just eyeball this a little bit and kind of do a 75 by 65. So this is going to be our icon, our image control checked when it's actually selected. And right now all of these are going to be checked, but we're going to drop in the logic to only this selected one get this effect of the checked state, right? So here we have, let's just grab these dimensions for the image, 75, 65, a nice easy number to remember. All right, so now we have that. So now let's go ahead and drop in our logic to say only give this view if the item is actually selected. And that's actually pretty straightforward. You have to have a really good strategy for this to work. And here's the strategy, here's the blueprint, and you can reuse this in many scenarios, right? So what I want to do is select the icon, and adjust the visible state, meaning that it only show this when it's checked. So how do we do that? Oh, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. The first thing you have to do is establish when it's actually checked. And we just assume that they're going to click on the icon, but you can copy the same formula for the label. So if we assume they're going to click on the icon, we're just going to go to the on select for that and keep this default select parent, because that's going to be important. We're going to use that in the save event. So based on the select parent, what we want to do is set a variable, and we want to call it, say, selected lot, right? Selected lot, and we want to set that. We don't want to set it to true. Normally that's what we do, but we're dealing with a gallery, and this formula is for every instance or every item within this gallery. So we have to be a little bit more particular on how do we set that. And the magic is you're going to set it to this item, meaning that the selected item within the collection or within the gallery and its value. We're going to set that to this reusable variable called var select lot, and that's it, right? And actually that's the key. And when I say you come in here with the right strategy and can reuse it in many different scenarios, this is the secret sauce. So once I have that set, now my logic becomes really straightforward and natural in everything else I need to do. So I only want to show this check mark when that's selected, right? So the checkmark visibility formula was going to be select var, or var select, because I prefix all of my variables with var. If it's equal to this item dot value, meaning that this is going to be true, then the visibility state was going to be true. If it doesn't equal this, the visibility state is going to be false, which means hide it. So let's see if this works. So if I come here and select that, you see how my check mark is following whatever selected. So our strategy is working out perfectly, and now we can reuse this for any other property, for any other control within this template. So now if I select the image icon, what did I do here? So here I adjusted the width and height to kind of give it that select option, right? So here my selected option is 75, and I only want 75 if var select lot, right, is equal to, and it's not a double equal, it's a single equal, which is confusing, right? It's equal to this current item dot value. And if that's true, I want 75, else I want its original state. Now, what's its original state? 105. 105, I assume the larger number is the width, right? So 105. So now I want to copy this, do the exact same thing for the height for the image control, right? And I'm going to just adjust the numbers. So that one's 65 when selected. So if that's true, this is 65. And when it's not true, it should be 85. Okay? So now we just kind of go here and do 85. So now let's test this out. So select, and it has that nice effect, right? So adjusting that selected height really makes sense. Now you can get fancy, right? You can get fancy and do the XY coordinate for this and all this other stuff until you blue in the face, until you get it to exactly where you want it from a design perspective. And really that's it. So we have our selected state, we have our custom icons, we got a nice graphical visual piece. The last piece we want to do is to save this. So when they select this item, we actually need to save it to the actual site column or to the actual list item representing this request, right? So to do that, and this is the power of having a gallery inside of the data card. So to do that, you go to the natural state, which was this drop down, and when it was saving, actually go to the data card, when it was saving, we all know that the save value, the thing that you're saving to the site column, is stored in the update property on the data card itself. And what it was doing, it was saying, okay, for that drop down, just save the selected value, right? So for us, because we're not using the drop down, we're using the gallery. For us, it's just going to be gallery lot options dot selected, and we're done. Really, honestly, it's that simple. You're done. So you're saving. So now for the selected item, that's actually going to get saved to the data card, aka the site column in the back end. And if this was a read-write, meaning that update, right? Meaning that they can select. Say, for example, the user comes in, they want to see all their requests, and they select on the request, and they come here and say, oh, which parking lot did I select? You want to be able to show the selected item based on their previous activity or their previous selection. So in order to do that, you go to the gallery. So what do they do for the data card, right? The drop down, I'm sorry, I keep calling these data cards, the drop down control, the one that we're hiding. For the drop down control, if we look at its properties, because that's a drop down, the value is going to be default selected items, right? And all they did was take the parent.default, meaning that once you hydrate this list item, it's going to say, oh, this value is stored in this site column, which is the parking lot site column. This is the value stored, and that's parent.default. It's going to hold that information. So now I just go to the gallery. It has the default property, and then I just drop this in there, right? And you're only able to use those parent.default and update, like gallery.selected and all this other good stuff, if you have the gallery as a child of the data card. That's the biggest secret, right? Because, and it's not obvious, because when you drop these galleries on there, they're going to be dropped at the root level of the screen, and you're out of scope of what parent means, because parent is contextual aware. And if you're under the data card, then its parent is going to be the data card, whereas if you're at the screen level, its parent is going to be at the screen, and the options you're looking for as far as interacting with the site column and saving data and retrieving data is not going to be available. So the biggest secret is to get this gallery under the data card, and it's not obvious how to do that unless you do your cut and replace. That's it for this video. What we're going to do in the next video is that when you click next, you notice that for our screen, we use the same icons for each option. For this screen, there's a different icon based on the option name or value, and we'll talk about how to do that. All right, any questions, leave it in the comment section. Well, until then, I'll see you in the next video.